So let's jump right in. You mentioned your first priority would be issues around economic development. What's the platform? Is there kind of, you mentioned community benefit agreements and some other policies. Is that the core, or are there policies beyond that?
I think there's three key things I would look at. First is community benefit agreements. Second, looking at small business development. And then the third piece is working on developing or building civic pride across the city through an aggressive community engagement strategy. Um, on the community benefits agreement piece, I've done a lot of research in my role with Canham Churches Organized for People, CCOP, in doing a lot of research around CBAs across the country, the way they were negotiated, creative ways that they were able to work with companies and developers to bring benefits to their community, and really bringing that to bear here in the city of Camden, bringing that research. But the key is to really build those collaborations amongst community, the businesses, developers, and government to really facilitate that conversation. What has happened here in the city of Camden over the past 3 years is, when I've done the research, they have what's called a triangle, right? There's community, government, and business developer, and what's been pursued here in the city of Camden is basically a two-way conversation between government and business, leaving the community out. And I think that was a major mistake on behalf of the current administration, in that the priorities of the community being heard as to what their needs were or what their priorities were, was lost opportunity. So a lot of the things that you hear coming out of City Hall about community investment agreements, I think they call it, is really not touching or really catching the needs or the desires of the community. It's the typical things that you hear with these construction projects in years past. The training program, which is really just a gauntlet that they get 40 people to run and maybe one person gets a job. That's not what we're looking for here. We need jobs on day one that somebody with a heartbeat and a willingness to work can get.
So a critic of community benefit agreements might say, sounds great, everyone loves community, but we're going to scare off businesses. What would you say to someone that says, maybe the mayor did the right thing because these businesses wouldn't be here if we took a hard negotiation line?
Well, I have a story to tell on that piece. In the process of pursuing conversations with the different unions, we had a conversation with the firefighters union, and they conveyed a story to us about their tour of Holtec. And the firehouse at Morgan Boulevard and Morgan and 9th, I think it is, they're the first responders to a Holtec. God forbid there's an emergency there, they would be first responders. So they had to get a feel for the layout and so on. So in the process of their tour, their tour leader asked them, so how are things going for you guys? And, they said, well, our firehouse is a little falling apart and our equipment's a little outdated and so on. And that person from Holtec said, well, geez, if the city would have asked us, we would have built you a firehouse. A $3 to $4 million firehouse for free. So that's Holtec saying that. And we're asking for tree plantings and pizza parties. That's how there's a disconnect there. In my conversations that I've had with the different companies or representatives, there is a desire to do meaningful work here in the city of Camden, to make change. Not pizza parties, not tree plantings, not painting this or painting that, but meaningful work where they know that their investment is going to make a difference. I had a conversation, I can't say the company, but in the process of the Creative Camden process recently, I was approached by somebody who actually works at one of these companies, and they said, I'm really intrigued about your seed fund, Community Economic Development Fund. I said, oh yeah, it's something that used in Milwaukee, and they put money into this, and then the money went out into the community. And I really would like to learn more about that. So there is an interest. There isn't a fear of chasing people away. When the pure capitalism of pure business is, if you don't ask, I'm not offering. If I can get a living room set for $1,000 and turn around and sell it for $3,000, why would I pay $2,500 for that living room set? I wouldn't offer to do that. So we have to be aggressive. We have to be, and being aggressive is not to say be aggressive in a negative way. It's to be deliberate. You're coming into our community. We want to welcome you here. You're receiving a lot of benefits from the incentives and the tax abatements worth $300 million, depending on your project. How about we talk about something along the lines of $500 to $1 million over the next 10 years in benefits? And I think that's a conversation all these guys, obviously relevant in proportion to their project. I wouldn't ask $1 million from somebody who's just starting out at $500,000 incentives, right? But I might ask for 50 or 100 over 10 years. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of room there, and I think there's the city of Camden sits on prime real estate, and I've said this in the past. We need to start acting like it. You know, when you go to a dollar store, what do you expect to find? Things for $1. The city has been run like a dollar store for too long. So when developers come in and businesses come in, they automatically think, well, I get a 20-year tax abatement, I won't have to do this, you'll give me my permits. So I really don't put a lot into that idea of scaring away companies.
So let's ask about that. How do pilots and tax subsidies fit into your economic development plan?
Yeah, when it comes to pilots and incentives or subsidies, for me, the key metrics are local job creation, investments in local infrastructure, the size of the project, and I would say limiting the size of the project. The idea of a suburban office park in the middle of a city is not appropriate. The community benefits agreement that we can negotiate. Those those four things would be key part of my litmus test, or not my litmus test, but my negotiating point.
And how much control does the mayor's office have over those things? The Economic Opportunity Act is state legislation. There's been state land. We're talking a lot about the EDA. How much can you do from the mayor's office?
Well, the power in City Hall comes with the zoning board and the planning board, and the permitting process and so on. To make these projects work, when you're negotiating CBAs in Brooklyn, in LA or Sacramento, that is the leverage the city has over those businesses, developers and so on. So if you want a fast-tracked permitting process, fast-tracked zoning process, and planning process, you come to the table, we negotiate. When it comes to recruitment of companies, I don't want to sit back and wait for them to come to me. That Office of Business Growth and Development that I spoke about earlier, they will be tasked with going out into the world and finding that company that has 50, 100, 200 entry-level jobs to bring it in. And then we roll out the red carpet. I deal with a lot of business owners that have multiple businesses in different towns around the region. When they talk about Camden, it's a very different story than when they talk about Pennsauken. In Pennsauken, they roll out the red carpet. They give you, somebody is assigned to work with you from the point that you go into City Hall to say, hey, I'm interested in starting a business, to the time that you turn around your sign open for business.
So how does that happen? So small businesses right now feel like they're getting a raw deal in the city. They look at these tax credits, they look at their own struggles. Mm-hmm. What can the mayor do, and what does the mayor do to make this city small business friendly?
I think to be realistic, the mayor does not have a large budget to allocate to resources or tax credits and the like. But we do have the bully pulpit, and we also have the opportunity to build collaborations. And we also have staff that we can dedicate and direct in a particular way. What I would do is, again, start the Office of Business Growth and Development, again, with a very, very clear mission. Work with business owners that are already here, help them overcome any problems that they have, any challenges they have, connect them to the resources that they need to access capital or get training or get technical assistance, recruit companies into the city, provide those connectivity to the CDCs that are running the commercial corridors, and saying, hey, listen, the market analysis in Parkside shows a pizza shop can be supported. I have a gentleman here who would like to open up a pizza shop. Put him in touch with PBCIP, get him in the ground, ensure that he has all the resources he needs, make sure he gets his inspections, make sure he gets in business. That's policy. That's not, it doesn't cost you anything. It's really prioritizing how you allocate your resources. One of the things that I've thought about is the Small Business Reinvestment Abatement Program. This would be for the small business owner, to encourage them to make investments, capital investments in their commercial real estate. So, I told this story a lot in my travels. I hear all these stories, but this one story sticks out. This gentleman had a commercial property, and it was a gravel parking lot that he had. So he decided to pave over that lot. Well, within 2 weeks of finishing that job, the tax office was at his property to reassess his property and raise his taxes. And he says to me, Ray, what's the incentive for me to improve my property when I'm automatically going to get hit with an assessment? I look at these big companies coming in, they have a 20-year abatement. What about us? So the abatements that I would be looking at is really based on the size of the investment being put into the property, and if there are any collateral benefits as far as job creation or facility improvement, that kind of thing. So if you're going to improve your electrical service because you're going to expand your operation, that creates jobs, maybe get a longer abatement, right? If you're going to redo your infrastructure into your building because the sewer lines and the water lines and you're going to make that investment, that may be a shorter abatement. We're really aligning it to the investment that's being made.
So we've talked about the economic piece from the perspective of a large company. We've talked about it from the perspective of a small company. What about labor? What about people working for these businesses? Where are you on a $15 minimum wage or sick leave for individuals? How do we make sure people working in these businesses, and particularly Camden residents, are getting a fair shake?
It's a very how would you say, delicate balancing act when you're dealing with supply and demand, right? So we want to attract companies into the city so that we have enough job positions to hire employees. So how we implement, I believe, in a minimum wage. I'm not sure what the number would be or how it would be phased in over time, but I do believe we should have a living wage in the city of Camden. If you're a teenager and this is your first job, that's one thing. But if you're an adult raising a family or caring for a family, that's a whole different story. When I was a young guy coming up, I worked at Roy Rogers. I was a teenager. $150 in my pocket at the end of the week was great to do whatever. But I had colleagues at Roy Rogers who worked during the day, and they were raising a family, and they got paid a lot more than I did because they were working 40 hours a week, they were caring for a family, they were adults, and so on. So there was a recognition of the different roles that somebody has in the same company. So I'm not sure how it would be rolled out and how we would implement it, but we want to make sure we balance it in such a way that we're not impeding investment coming into the city.